Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another Straight Up Solo. And in this episode, we are going to take a look at Black Forest and show you how this game plays from a solo standpoint, and then I'll let you know what I think. Let's get started. Okay, folks, and as usual, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And if you have, I do really appreciate that support. Thank you so much. So I am in the midst of a solo game. A solo game is played in 5 rounds. In each round, you're going to play all 5 of these meeples on the board, action pawns, if you will, and they are going to help you take actions. And you're going to use all that you see here to try to score points in a beat your own score, kind of self sort of blocking mechanism like you usually see with the Uwe Rosenberg games. Now this one, like its predecessor Glass Road, uses these production wheels in a similar fashion, but they have churched them up a little bit. And now you have provisions which you're making from this wheel over here. And these provisions are what you're going to have to pay when you move from one town to the next. And you also have this little guy over here that makes commodities, and you can spend that as an optional move to move around this tile with a different tile on the board, effectively kind of changing the position of the two. You swap them. And that might be important because maybe you want to get a specific tile into a city, and that's there. You can kind of swap with it. But you don't actually have to be next to it. You can play that at any time before your turn starts. You're also going to be able to move to these spots right here where you spend a certain number of things to get other things, okay? And they call them jobs, and basically they're either jobs or contracts. Or what do you want to say? You spend X, you get all these Ys, okay? Now, the real interesting thing, well, there's a lot of interesting things, don't get me wrong. But the interesting thing about this game is you have just tons and tons and tons of different buildings that you can build that do all sorts of different things. And they each have a B side. And so when you play, except for the first game where you use all the A sides, they say just randomly flip over 10 to the B side. And so you're going to have different buildings to work with. And there are, let's see, that's 36. So you flip them over, that's 72 different small buildings. Plus, you've got some of these large buildings here. And you only see a certain number of these throughout the game because there's a whole bunch of other ones that you might get in different games over here. Lots of different buildings. But the buildings basically do kind of 4 different things. The first type of building is the conversion building where you're going to turn X into Y. You can do that at any time during your turn. It doesn't matter when, as long as you're not gaining a reward, which I'll kind of explain a little bit in the wheel in a second. So those are all the blue ones. And as you can see here, look, the grain mill, it says you basically discard one of these to get 3 food or porridge or whatever it was. All right. And then there's ones like this, where it's just an instant benefit. If you have 2 of these, you get 3 of those. So all of these brown ones or tan ones are an instant benefit. Then you have some of these ongoing abilities like this. Whenever you gain a sideboard, you get 3 sand, okay? And each of these buildings, by the way, is worth some amount of points for the most part. Where did this one go? That's 7A. And then there are these that are the end game, or they're basically point buildings, okay? So this is per adjacent empty space, you get an extra point. So if you put this into a spot right here, not only would it be worth 4 points at the end of the game, but it'd be 5, 6, 7 because there's empty spaces around it. And then you have more, I guess, when you look at these big buildings, they're a little bit more powerful versions of the small ones, and they take up 2 spaces. So there's tons and tons of things to build. And these things right here kind of help you understand what category the buildings are related to. So like all 3 of these buildings are related to cattle, and all 3 of these are related to pigs. These are for food. And that's why you set these up in such a way. Now, what is going on with this wheel? Well, the wheel is basically set up so that anytime you have nothing in these black spaces like here and here, the wheel will automatically produce different components or different resources, different luxury resources, if you want to say. They're not luxury, but they're like advanced resources. And the same thing with this one. So if I was to move up the sand, somehow, I would immediately move the wheel one space, and that would produce glass, but it would also reduce the amount of everything I have over here. Effectively, what it's doing is it's saying, no matter what, as soon as you have one of each of the resources over here, you will spend every one of those to make one of those resources over there. And that can be sometimes annoying because you might be trying to get certain numbers of resources here to build buildings, but yet it moves on you as soon as you get those other ones and break free whatever the log jam was. And now you've produced glass. Well, that's great, but I didn't want glass right now. I needed more charcoal, and I don't have as much. The only exception to that is brick, which operates as an independent resource in this game, unlike glass roads, which was brick and glass, into these both in the production wheel. And so there's a wrinkle there that you have to be cognizant of, okay? Now, at the end of the game, you're going to score points a little bit differently than you did in Glass Road. So first, you score one for every glass, just like you did in Glass Road. Then you get 2 for each of these extension boards that you get. And you get the extension board by basically using or upgrading your, your glass factory 3 times. It's not really upgrading. It just moves this and puts another board in here and puts forests out there. So you get 2 points for those. You're going to get 1 point for wherever this arrow is pointing. So the more you move this wheel, the more points you're going to score. Not this wheel, just this one. You're going to get 1 point per cow or cattle or pig that is on your stable over here. And it says so right on there. And then you'll get whatever points are associated with whatever buildings you've built and end game points. And so that's how you're going to score at the end, okay? Now, how do I get all that done? Well, I'll show you. Let's play around, all right? So when it's in the solo game, wherever I start from, I can put my guys anywhere I want, but from there I have to then deal with when I go to a different town, I have to pay the travel costs. If I go back to the same town, not only do I have to pay the travel costs, but I have to pay 1 resource of any type for any pawn that's already existing in that space. Except if I use the white pawn, then you get to do that for free. The other thing is that whenever I go to a town space, I can take either or both of the actions there, or I can complete a job if there happens to be a job in the town. And in this case, the jobs are not in the town, they're in locations. And so that's what you're kind of doing, all right? So just to kind of get things going here, I'm going to try to get myself some more sand, and that way I can get some more glass and build some buildings. So let's start by putting let's put my resource here, or my pawn there. So first it says I'm going to get 1 sand per lake. Well, I have 2 lakes, so that's 1, and it moves immediately, 2 sand, okay? Now notice how I reduced everything else, right? Then I'm going to use this. I'm going to spend 1 charcoal to get 4 bricks. So let's spend 1 of these charcoal over here, and I'll get 4 bricks, which puts me to 6 bricks. That person's turn is done. Now, what could I do? Well, if I go to one of these other spaces in the town, I don't have to pay any resources to do that, and I don't have to do any travel. So we'll just basically be able to take these 2 actions or these 2 actions again. But I'm not going to do that because it's not really helpful for what I'm trying to do. So the question is, do I want to go over here? Well, I can't because I don't have 7 porridge to do that, but that is a really nice space. Would I want to go over here and spend a combination of 5 cattle or pigs to get all those? Well, that would be cool, except I don't really want to sacrifice those at this moment because those are going to score me points at the end of the game. So should I come up here or should I go over there? Well, there's lots of different choices to make, but if I want to, I really need to be paying attention to what kind of buildings I want to build. And so something that might be nice is some of these scoring buildings. Like this one says, the Knight's Manor. Per empty space in your domain, you lose 1. So this would be one where if I had a full up place, which I'm not going to have, I could gain a lot of points from this. That's not going to help. But I did like what I saw earlier, this village church. Had I thought about it a little bit earlier, maybe I could have done something better with it. But let's see what I could do to build that. So in order to build that, I need more sand because I need more glass. I'm sorry, I need more water because I need more glass. So let's see who might give me water. Well, the water space is over here. So I have to eventually get over there. Can I do anything on the way that would help? Well, I bet I can. So I'm going to put this, first off, I'm going to put this right here. And what that's going to do, I can spend 1 wood to get another stable, which I kind of want because, whoops, this guy should really be here. You can move them around. I think I'm going to need more, at least 1 more stable before the end of the game. So I'll spend the wood, I'll get the stable, and let's put it someplace where I'm not going to conflict with that church that I wanted to build. Let's go ahead and put it right here. All right. Then I'm going to spend 1 wood and get 4 charcoal. And I'd like to start advancing this, but I need to move this commodity. Oh, and by the way, when I went here, I have to move down a provision. So let's spend that 1 wood. Hope I didn't already spend it. Might have. Can't remember. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, are there any spaces I don't really need here, but ones that I do? Yes. I could spend a commodity right now with my next turn, which I'm going to do. Immediately this moves, and I'm going to move this and this. I'm going to swap these 2 spaces. Now in doing that, I'm going to put this guy here, and I'm going to be able to build a building, all right? Plus, I'll be able to gain 2 resources of any type, but they have to be the same. So I'm going to gain 2 waters. 1, 2. That'll get me a water. Now, I hope I haven't robbed myself of what I need. No, I've just got enough, thank goodness, because that wood was going down. And now on this space, I'm going to build this building. I'm going to build that village church. And I'm going to put it right here so I can at least get some points out of it for being in extra spaces. Now, maybe what I should have done or could have done is waited a little bit on that if I could clear some forest. But I'm not going to try to make it perfect, because if I cleared both of these out, I get a 1 more point. But I'm just going to leave it at this. So I spend the 2, 1, 2 glass. I spend the 3 brick, 1, 2, 3. And I spend the 2 wood, 1, 2. So that was worth, that's a 7-point move right there, as long as I don't put anything there, which I don't plan to. All right. Now, what else should I do? Well, why don't I try to get some more food to advance this, because maybe I could go ahead and get that. So what I'll do is I'll pay the provision right here. And then I'm going to use this space right here. And I'm going to say per cattle. So I got 3 cattle, I'll get 3 food. All right, 1, 2, 3, or 3 porridge. Now the final move, I don't really need that. It would be nice to clear some more space. So let's just do this. Let's spend the 1 provision, move over here, and let's move over here. Let's get 1 of those pigs to put in this area. And then let's remove a forest and get 4 more wood. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the whole round, okay? So when I'm done with the round, I move this over here, and I'm going to have 1 more round, and then that's the end of the game. Now, this is a beat your own score, and you can score the highest level of scores is all the way up to in the 70s, I think, is the top tier. Yeah, 70 points would get you the top tier here. So anywhere from 20 to 70, 20 is at the low end. So much more point scoring in this game than in Glass Road, where you would be somewhere between upper 20s and lower 30s and an average scoring game. Unless you're a master at it, then maybe you could do higher. But for the most part, it was much more of a constrained game. Now, the one thing that happens in the 4th round, between the 3rd and 4th round, is you take all of these village tiles off, not the jobs, but the village tiles off. You shuffle them up, and then you distribute them back on the board based on the icons that match. And that helps kind of it just changes the board up so that if you had some little loop that you were relying on, well, now you got to think of something else, which I like. Also, whenever you complete one of these jobs as one of your turns, you'll deal off a new one from this stack and you put it someplace on the board. So that pretty much gives you the full identity or understanding of what's going on here. Let me tell you what I think. So let's immediately talk about the comparison between this and Glass Road. First of all, I still own Glass Road. I think Glass Road is a very good game, but I do think this is a better game in most every aspect, in my opinion. I find that the buildings are a little bit more interesting. There seems to be more of them. The big buildings are a nice wrinkle too. The just the production wheels and the way they work is very similar, but the fact that you score some points for moving that one on encourages you to kind of move forward with that wheel. But the real thing I think that is more enjoyable to me is the game feels like, especially for the solo standpoint, it, it feels like there's more you can do. Your board can expand, all right? You can go to different places and work out with more certainty what you can do versus what would happen in Glass Roads is you were always at the mercy of the cards in some ways where you could pick one or the other. And if the card you wanted didn't come out of the right order, it was really frustrating. It's like, oh my gosh, I got that card early. I don't need that card now. I need it in 2 draws or whatever, 2 plays. And so that was a real frustrator with that game. Not that it was bad. It was just that's what caused a lot of the uncertainty. In this game, the uncertainty comes up with how the board is set up and the buildings that you have. They're always different. And the configuration of the buildings, the village is different, which makes for a different type of game every time as far as what am I going to be trying to do. So it's not like you can sit down and say, well, every game I do this and this and this, and that's just what I do, because I'm sure there's some generally good tactics. In fact, they even talk about them. How do I get started in the back? And they tell you about that. But for the most part, because of your 37 buildings, actually, I guess in the solo, it's 41 buildings, 10 of them are always going to be different and you've experienced before, plus the 4 buildings, I 14 different ones. There's just going to be a lot of different things that you can experience. And the variety, I think, is where this game wins, plus the flexibility and the lack of frustration in, I didn't draw the right card, I don't need this card right now. Now it's about, okay, if I want to get to a place, I might have to pay a couple extra provisions because I can skip the towns. I can pay extra provisions to go further. Or maybe I have to double back, but if I double back, I have to expend some basic resources for each pawn that's already there. So it's like you can do what you want to do regardless of the scenario. It just might cost you some more. And I prefer that type of gameplay more than the kind of card this or that, and then both at the end, if I remember all correctly for Glass Road. So I do think this is a superior game, and it ought to be, right? Because this game came out with 12 years, maybe even longer since Glass Road, maybe 14 years. This has had 14 years of additional gaming experience out there to refine the concepts and make them better, and I think it does it in just about every way. So I really like it. Now, it is a beat your own score Uwe Rosenberg, which I love. Those are the solo games that pit me against myself in my own brain, right? And I've always been a fan of that. But that isn't for everybody. I know some people kind of wish they had an Autumn, this or that. That's fine. There's a lot of games out there, but Uwe Rosenberg games are not those games. And I don't mind whatsoever because it means I can pour almost all my focus on the actual game itself. And in this case, my entire focus, right? Because the blocking of the pawns is not too bad. All things considered. So it very much feels like an Uwe solo mode from before, the original feel of solo for me, which I have a very special place in my heart for that, and I love those kinds of things. And then finally, I would say that if you'd only beat your own score, well, you're going to be frustrated here. It is beat your own score with conditions, so it's not just, whatever. But I think it's really cool. Just in general, it kind of harkens back to that. The other thing is that it has a lot of similarities with existing Uwe games before, right? And so if you're saturated with that, you might say, it looks cool, but I've already kind of been there, done that. And it does feel like its own game for sure, but it is very similar to others. And so, the look, of course, and the wheels are very much like Glass Roads, but all the other stuff, takes some bits and pieces from other designs and things, which is fine. Because to me, I love his style of games, and I really appreciate having more of them and having more variety in them. So I'm fine with that. But if you weren't a huge fan or not a huge fan of his games in general, I don't think this one is going to stray so far from what he's done before that you're going to be like, oh, wow, this is the one, because it's very familiar territory. So I like it. It is a game where I only had to read the rules once, which was awesome, and I immediately knew what I was going to do because it's so familiar in that regard. Not immediately from the strategy, but I just knew how to play it right there. And I'm definitely going to keep this game for a very long time. I'm going to play it because I really like these types of designs. So if you do, this is the game for you, and you will have a lot to enjoy. If you don't, if you're looking for something very different, it is not going to be here. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Whatever you do in the future, I really hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy.